Join me as I travel across Europe to London, Edinburgh, Prague and Berlin on a literary adventure to discover 4 books relevant to each location.
When I was born, I would have been shot for doing what I'm about to do now.
Welcome to Paperback Journeys. London, the spiritual home of the written word. From Shakespeare's globe to the home of Charles Dickens. Nowhere will you find an audience more proud of its literature. Or maybe that's just me being biased because I was born here. Anyway, here's my little face.
So I'm in Piccadilly now. You can see the iconic billboards behind me here. And Hatchard's is just around the corner, so I'm going to be going there. But it's just like, look, I've got a backpack on and everything. It feels so weird for 2 reasons. Number one, it's sunny. Like, what's going on? Number 2, backpacking around the city that you were born is unnatural.
Hatchard's is the oldest and most renowned bookshop in the United Kingdom, with its rich and fascinating history that spans over 2 centuries. John Hatchard initially opened his bookshop at 173 Piccadilly, where it quickly gained popularity among the city's literary elite and was even granted the royal warrant, which means they are the official supplier to the royal family. Rubbish! I know, but you can't blame Hatchard's for that. Hatchard's continued to thrive during the Victorian era, catering to the literary tastes of prominent figures such as Charles Dickens, Lord Byron, and Oscar Wilde. With 5 floors of literature to choose from, I had my work cut out for me. So, which book did I choose?
So I've just come out of Hatchard's and, mate, it's lovely in there, you know? A nice ambience. So I just wanted to talk about the book that I purchased. It's The Uncommon Reader by Alan Bennett. It's a fictionalized story of the late Queen Elizabeth II. She falls in love with literature and it kind of changes her perspective on life and on, I believe, the monarchy. Obviously, I haven't read it yet. The reason I bought it is because it's a limited edition that's exclusive to Hatchard's. So, you know, you just feel like while I'm here, I might as well. Also, I cheated because I know it's supposed to be 4 cities, 4 books, but this is one that I wanted to purchase. London Seance Society by Sarah Penner. So yeah, I picked up 2. I've already cheated at the task. We'll just count this one. London's purchase, The Uncommon Reader by Alan Bennett.
So, 1 down and 3 to go. Next up, Edinburgh. For fans of dark academia, I can think of no place better to visit than Edinburgh. If the sound of London is the bells of Big Ben, the sound of Edinburgh is the scratching of pencil on paper. The city is a maze of cobbled streets and narrow alleys, leading out to Gothic churches and small cafes.
Everywhere you go around here, you feel as though you're in the Harry Potter books.
And that's not a coincidence. J.K. Rowling was inspired by... I don't like her. Rubbish! Bloody rubbish! I know, but you can't blame Edinburgh for that. But listen. Putting aside she who shall not be named, everywhere you look, you can see the inspiration for Hogwarts. From the world-famous Greyfriars Kirkyard, where you'll find familiar names etched in stone, such as William McGonagall, Anne and Robert Potter, and even Tom Riddle. Then take a stroll down the road where you'll see the sloping Victoria Street, the real-life inspiration for Diagon Alley.
I want you to imagine that you're going to university in Edinburgh and then every night you're studying by a roaring fire, you're on your way to class with books under your arm. Dun, 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 dun.
But enough about that. What book did I get?
So I went to a bookstore in Melrose, just outside of the city. And it's called The Reading Room. Really nice, quaint little bookstore, and I asked for a very specific book recommendation, something that, oh my god, I'm getting out of breath. Something that had a strong sense of place here in Edinburgh. Downhill is better. Getting book recommendations that are so specific is one of the lovely things that you can do in a bookstore that you can't do on Amazon. Anyway, the book recommendation that I received was Luckenbooth by Jenny Fagan. The book is basically about the daughter of the devil who rose to Edinburgh in a coffin to birth a child. It's also the story of a tenement building spanning 100 years, the people who live in the tenement building, and also a story of the errors that the 100-year story spans, and also a story of Edinburgh. And it just sounds like a beautiful mixture of magical Gothic realism, which, you know, that's what Edinburgh is all about. By the way, if you want to know what this building is behind me, it's St. Giles, where Queen Elizabeth II's body visited in Edinburgh so that people could come and pay their respects. But yeah, beautiful building and a beautiful city. Normally this is like really crowded, but sometimes what I like to do when I visit cities, it's not like a 28 days later situation, don't worry, there hasn't been a zombie apocalypse or anything, but it's about 5 o'clock in the morning, so the sun rises early here at this time of year, and so sometimes when I visit a city I like to sort of wake up early, take some pictures, walk about, do some filming and stuff like that, so you know, when it's nice and quiet.
We've reached the halfway point of our literary adventure. If you haven't already, make sure you hit the subscribe button. I don't always travel around Europe. Most of the time I just talk about books. Next up, the darkly beautiful city of Prague.
You see this clock behind me? There's a mental story behind this clock. I'm going to come over here to tell you the story of the clock. In the 15th century, the Prague Council hired a clockmaker to build something completely unique for the city. And so the clockmaker got to work and he built the astronomical clock in Prague's Old Town Square. This clock was so incredible, so far ahead of its time. It was the only one like it in all of Europe. And so the Prague Council decided we can't have anything else like this in the world. We can't have this clock being built in London. We can't have this clock being built in Paris. So they brought the clockmaker in. They told him, you can't be making these clocks anymore. He's like, I'm a clockmaker. What else am I going to do? I went, okay, fair enough. Out come his eyes, and rendering him useless for his trade. So there he is, this old blind clockmaker wandering around Prague, and he decides, okay, I can't have my eyes, you can't have the clock. And he climbs up to the top of the tower and he throws himself into the gears, completely destroying the clock and also killing himself in the process. And it takes them 100 years to repair it. And now every day, hundreds of people gather in the Old Town Square to watch the old clockmaker's apostles circle round. Welcome to Prague. Behind me is the Franz Kafka Museum.
For me, visiting the Kafka Museum when in Prague is a must. The exhibit traces the life of the author, with original works and personal letters to friends and family, deep red stairways, strategically placed mirrors, halls of filing cabinets. They all capture the absurd and disorienting essence of his work. And just across the courtyard, is a shop with books in it.
So when I was in the Kafka Museum, they have a bookshop across the courtyard, and there I purchased Franz Kafka's The Trial. This is the story of a bank worker named Joseph K, who's been accused of a crime, but he doesn't know the nature of the crime. And for the whole story, he's trying to navigate this impossible legal system and also find out what exactly is he accused of. A question to which nobody seems to know the answer.
Of course, it was always going to be Kafka, wasn't it? The link between Prague and Kafka cannot be overstated. He is undoubtedly the ancient city's favourite son. Where other places are littered with statues of generals and royalty, Prague has Kafka, and he is everywhere. Putting aside the museum dedicated to his life and works, you'll find his face on postcards, coffee mugs, t-shirts. Listen, the bloke's got more merch than Logan Paul. The city cannot escape the man, as indeed, the man could not escape the city. As a teenager, Kafka once wrote in a letter to a friend, "Prague doesn't let go. This old crone has claws." Unlike Kafka, we're able to leave Prague behind for the final leg of our journey.
Thanks for the book. Thanks for the absinthe.
Germany, the birthplace of Wolfgang von Goethe, Friedrich Nietzsche, the Brothers Grimm, and Anne Frank. While Germany's connection with literature is strong, Berlin's is complicated. Babelplatz is one of the most famous literary locations in the world, though not for the most uplifting of reasons. In May of 1933, German university students emptied the libraries of their books and brought them into the public square to be burned, as Joseph Goebbels, Minister of Propaganda, gave an impassioned speech. Many of the authors stood by as their writing was consumed by flames. Although it's not a happy stop for lovers of literature, it's an important one. And by memorializing it and displaying the act rather than hiding it, Berlin relegates it to the past. You see this all over Berlin, from the Brandenburg Gate, which hosts musical concerts, to the Berlin Wall, which once only served as a tool of division, but now is a canvas for artists to spread messages of unity. Germany doesn't shy away from its history, but there's one location which remains buried.
Yeah, let me just show you this. Monument to the murdered Jews of Europe. Have a look at the size and scope of this. And it goes on in every direction. Look. It's huge. So you've got this massive monument. I'll take you to another place, just around the corner. And I think you're gonna find the contrast quite poignant. You see this little lonely area. A little bit messy, a little bit overgrown. Just tucked around the corner, around the back of everything. Can you guess what this is behind me? This is where Hitler, this is where it all ended. No monument, no memorial, no statue. I don't know why, but I just found that to be so fitting an end. This bloke who thought he was just so glorious that he was almost godlike. And the place where, when he finally gave up, unable to face the consequences of his actions that affected millions and millions of people, then they just built a car park over his grave. And this is where, you know, people walk their dogs and they just take a shit. I don't know. I just like that. And I thought it might be interesting for you to see. Stuck one through his nuts. So anyway, I've had such a packed out day today, done some really incredible things. We went on a walking tour around the Berlin Wall. We went on the TV Tower, which is the tallest building in the European Union, and we had a perfect panoramic view of all of Berlin. So now I've got just enough time to pop over to Dussmann. So what is Dussmann? Dussmann is a department store, but it refers to itself as Kultur Kaufhaus, which translated means the department store of culture. It's the biggest bookstore in Germany, I believe, and it's got a section purely dedicated to books that are printed in English, which is the only language that I speak. It's the only language that I can read in.
Doosman had an impressive selection of books printed in English, and I was spoiled for choice, but eventually settled on something a little bit different that was highly recommended.
Hey, I'm back in the hotel room now. The staff inside of Doosman were incredibly helpful, and after asking for a few recommendations about something which was culturally relevant to Berlin, they came up with this book, which is Mouse. I'm going to block out the front cover because of the imagery there. I'm talking about this in my hotel room rather than outside some famous monument. I was thinking about doing it outside of or besides the Berlin Wall, but you don't really want to be waving a book cover like this around in the middle of Berlin unless you just want to provoke. Mouse tells the story of the trials of the Jewish people during World War II. It's told in a unique way though, with the Jewish people portrayed as wide-eyed mice, and I don't know if YouTube is going to let me say this word, so let's just call them the World War II baddies, portrayed as cats. This book is said to be one of the greatest graphic novels of all time, so I'm really excited to read it. It's also said to be harrowing, difficult to read, but also inspiring as well, as you witness the protagonist's resilience against almost insurmountable odds. Art Spiegelman is the son being inspired by the direct experiences of his father. So it's like a retelling of his father's story. I have a feeling about this book, you know? I think it's going to hurt, and I think it's going to be eye-opening.
When I was born, I would have been shot for doing what I'm about to do now. Brandenburg Gate. Pretty amazing. So it's the end of my German tour and the end of my European tour. Which book am I most looking forward to reading? Probably The Trial by Franz Kafka. That's probably the one I'm most excited to read. After that, maybe Mouse. I've loved every second of it, and thanks so much for joining me. Oh, and by the way, if you'd like to, you know, see my reviews of all of those books after I've read them, then you can subscribe to the channel. This isn't really a travel channel. This is just something that I decided to do while I was taking a vacation around Europe, you know. This is more of a book channel. It's just all things books. But, you know, whenever I go on holiday, I like to pick up a book. So if you like this video, I'll make more when I go away to different cities in America and Europe and, you know, other continents as well that I visit. Just broke the law again.